And here we are. It's Sam and Michael. It's a Friday. There's probably not so much huge time for pairing, unfortunately, but we might have a bit of space for a bit of this and a bit of that. Maybe some local support. But yeah, so interestingly, after we finished yesterday, and somewhat annoyingly, our nice branch with our clean single acceptance test failed, which was annoying, and it seemed it was failing for some reason on the Jasmine tests. But I bumped the Jasmine gem, and that fixed it, and so now it's pausing and it's green. So that's good. Interestingly, Brian's got a sort of experimental pull request in there with he's updated to Ruby 2.3 and lots of gems, and he's got that green. He in particular, he has made some changes in the hooks for the cucumber, where instead of using before, he's using around to probably increase the likelihood with which certain drivers are being used. But of course, it takes. I happen to have run this branch locally, and it's also green for me locally. But that's our big challenge with this overarching intermittent JS failure problem: is we don't know if that's a fix until. Well, we're not sure if we ever know it's a fix, but certainly seems like a step in the right direction. Although, and so this is, he was just saying to me, "Oh, right, so maybe we should pull the 2.3 Ruby upgrade into the clean room stuff," and I'm kind of, is that a step too far? Anyway, I was just saying to him, I think that the sensible next step on this clean room thing is to pull in the documents feature stuff and see if that plays nicely with the Scrums feature.
Yeah.
And we could even do. Oh, I notice I've got my Wi-Fi on, and I want to be on the hard network. Just let me turn that off and let me. This may interrupt us briefly. Let's see if it's interrupted us. I can still hear you, so I think it probably hasn't. So good, hard link. So actually, we could do that. What I had been doing before was working through the local support stuff. I just spent some time following some Hound suggestions on cleaning up CSS in website in local support, which was a reasonably diverting activity, and reflect and it went reasonably well. And I think definitely compared to 2 years ago, my confidence with CSS is much higher than it was. But anyway, I've got like an action item that I've realized I missed over, which was to try and this thing which was related to the devise token failure on here. I said to Marwen that I would clear this up because I think a different approach is required. So certainly, if you weren't around, this is probably what I would have done next, just to get that done. And I think that would bring all of the website, the local support stuff, up to date. Well, there's also still this email validations thing, which we were looking at together before, which is still a pain point. So, do you have any preference about what to work on?
No.
Nope. Well, if not, then what I'm tempted to do is just try and wrap up this thing here. So I don't know if you remember the background story here. We had a user whose token expired seemingly too soon, and I believe we've fixed the underlying issue by now making sure that device secret key is set on production.
Right.
Marouin also wrote a test to check that the secret key should not change after restarting the server, because this I assume this is the default out of the box device behavior, which I think is slightly odd. That if the environment variable is not set, then it just sets a random variable. It seemed, and so he could in principle make his test go green by just hard coding a key in there. But that
was
yeah, I mean, I think neither of these arrangements are very desirable. I was thinking that what it should do really is if the environment variable is not set, it should throw an exception, or I think we should just, it needs to warn whoever's dealing with it that the key's not being set in the environment, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So we could just check out this branch. I don't even necessarily know if that particular.
I feel like we changed it over to a random for security reasons.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
I'm not sure. I know certain keys, like people, I think like the rack keys and everything. I think there's certain keys that if an attacker knows the key, they can execute arbitrary code.
Right.
Which could be used as an attack. I mean, it's unlikely, but it could be used as an attack against a developer running it locally.
Sure. But so
which is why it was set to be random. So it's kind of
right. But would
what the key is instead of just being hard coded.
Right. I'm certainly not. I don't think it should be hard coded. But I'm also thinking that it being random is something. It being random there is a perfectly reasonable solution for developers working on the this on their own machine. The danger, it seems to me, is that if, for example, someone takes this and deploys it to Heroku and they don't remember to set this key, then they encounter this problem that we've got, which is of course not a catastrophic problem. But it's, I guess it's whether we think, should we be introducing a pain point for our developers so that they have to, they're like, during the setup, they're like, oh, well, I need a secret key. Why do I need a secret key? And they have to sort of do that. Or should we can sort of, with this setup, we can clearly make it a bit easier for our starting developers versus if we just had nothing here, right? And if the secret key was set to nil, which would presumably cause an error, or we force it to throw an error, or what have you, then we would remove a potential pain point for people who are deploying the system down the line, actually running it live. Do you know what I mean? Did that make sense?
Kind of.
And as I weigh those two options up, it seems to me that kind of probably actually this is then maybe better, because we probably care right now more about making things simple and easy for people like Marouin or Piotr or people, like the next 3 or 4 people who start with local support than we do about a hypothetical, redeployment of local support in China or in what have you. You know what I mean? Which would operate as an argument to just say that we just close this pull request and sort of that's it. We're kind of good.
Maybe.
Yeah. So just talking with T. thinking we might just close this pull request as the automated random is more secure for our developers, and having a random one auto set means less startup overhead for our. I mean, I guess the other path would be to go like what website one has done, and so we would use
.env or whatever.
Well, one is .env. That still creates overhead for the developers, although perhaps less, and it's slightly more. It's more convenient. If we were using a website one like approach where we have this settings thing in the config, then we could have it set up so that, for example, oh, actually, no, that's a YAML. I was just thinking here that we could have Ruby in here, but no, if it's a YAML file, then we can't. Yeah, I was just thinking about, it could go, and it would be done in some things or not other ones. So,
I mean, maybe we could wait. I guess it doesn't set the environment variables there.
When you say there, you mean in the? No. So this settings thing ends up. It just no, and actually no. Right, this won't. Yeah, I mean, one would have to change the devise.
Right, because devise is actually reaching directly into.
At least so our local support devise is. What have we got? We've got that config initializers devise. Yeah. So interestingly here, so like we've got the secret key set there on website one. Let's get rid of that. And website one. See, website one, they've got the secret key hard coded.
Yeah.
In there, which is not ideal. And we pull it out the environment very well. I mean, this could be reaching into the settings, but there's no particular advantage of it doing that, in that we don't particularly need this to vary from case to case.
Well, it could vary between development and production, right?
Right, but the thing that we want to do is we want to avoid. I mean, as you're saying, it's sort of an extreme corner case, but we want to avoid any hard-coded thing going into that. So, I mean, hypothetically, it could be varied between production and development and test, but there's no value of doing that in this context. For Stripe, obviously, there's right, we want to make sure that certain keys are used in different things.
I mean, kind of what we want is in test and development it to be random, potentially, or to I mean, that would be the easiest, and then in production it throw an error.
Yeah, we would definitely like it to throw an error if it were doing that within production. Right. Yes. I mean, I guess would there be interesting? You know, I mean, one could just stick a bit of code at the end here that would say,
you know, raise no secret key provided, or like the Stack Overflow says.
Oh, have you got to Stack Overflow like?
But you'd have to actually check.
You'd have to check that it's in the production environment, but that doesn't seem unreasonable thing to do. How do I get rid of the get out date? Let me go.
And this is just
Sorry, where did you post? Oh, okay. Here it comes.
This is actually someone saying.
Right.
Huh.
I think that and then they're discussing about what kind of exception to use. I don't think the kind of it particularly matters, really.
No, it doesn't really matter for us. I mean, as long as it stops the Heroku deploy, right?
Yeah. And so, I mean, almost one could have like a check operator. I mean, I guess, does it make sense to have it here? Then it would be like raise.
And you can have your own method, like.
Yeah, I mean, that's right. I was just thinking to write out what we can pull it out into method in a second. So no devise secret key set in environment variable. Go on.
Actually, devise underscore, exactly. I would actually.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. And then kind of here it's like if, and what's the thing for the? Are they checking the env? What's the if it env production? Way to check for production in rack. Rack. Ah. I should know this. Oh, it's Rails env then.
Rails underscore env equals production.
Right. If Rails underscore env equals production. It's like put a line through it for me. But in this case, it's sort of and.
It's environment. It's actually. I don't think it's just a well. Okay. I mean, no. I mean, I think it's. It's env. It's inside the environment array or whatever.
Oh, okay.
It's not actually like a variable.
Oh, okay. Like this.
And
And then not that. So this one. I mean, it's messy, isn't it? It's awfully messy. But this is at least the functionality that we would like to have.
Right. And I would also append. Consider using secure random.hex64 to generate or whatever.
Right. Okay. Yeah. For the message.
It's like a helpful message.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, there's almost like two like minor. So we can have it like def raise. That's just ridiculous to just do that. We've got the one thing I've got like a multiple. One is here is like we've got the question is secret. So this is devise secret key set in production, and then we just take that out of there, and then we say
not set in production. You mean?
Well, I think rather than putting a not, then I can do an unless. I mean, that may be a mistake.
Well,
then I would do here like unless.
It's the same logic though. You just paste it in.
Exactly the same logic. Oh, right. And devise secret key set in production. Yes, yeah, so it should be like this, right? And then
But
devise secret key set in production.
That's not actually equivalent because we could be in a non-production environment, right? And that'll fail, and then we'll throw an exception.
Okay, so this should be.
We actually only care about the case where you're in production and the key is not set.
Right. So device secret key instead of it. So that's a good case, yeah, right. Okay. All right. If commits is not set in production. Like that. Like so. And then we have a like for the helpful message. Isn't there there's some kind of like syntax for making a nice multi-line message that I always forget.
A multi-line string, you mean?
Yeah, like please set the message.
Or percent sign.
Is that the one there's like I thought there was another one that's I thought there was that one. Mm-hmm. There's another one where you can sort of specify this starting and finish. Oh, why is there a sequel? I thought there was another one that allows you to do. Oh no, that's it. The doc string there. You do this.
Oh,
like that. I think is that. That one looks cleaner to me almost. So this is no devise secrets key message. Oh, go on. I thought I'd stop my trackpad doing silly things like that today. Please set a device in for your production server. Consider using tools. Random secure random hex. To ensure security. Or something like that.
yeah. I mean, really, as long as you get a secure 64-digit hex
Okay.
number, whatever. But
yeah. No. I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. So presumably, if I just try and run something now, like the Rails server here, that would just trip that. I guess it's not. If I run it in, so if I do like Rails env equals production at that, yeah. So yeah, there you go. Is there? Do we want to give them like a link to something, or we don't care? The main thing I was thinking about the testing for here is so that this test will in principle only work in the Rails production. I guess like for testing this, do we care about testing this, that it works effectively? I mean, I'm just thinking about in the context of Marilyn wrote this test, and I wonder if the is a test. He's got it in user spec. I mean, I feel like we're kind of doing pretty good due diligence, really, to have this stuff here at all. What do you think about specs for this?
Is it really possible to spec it?
Well, following that, you know, rather than knocking the end, like we could stub this method and then just check that. But I think actually probably it's going to, the fact that it rails in it, yeah, I think any kind of test we're going to do is in a full foul of, well, I guess we could like probably the load path, the device thing gets loaded before the test stuff even gets going. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's probably not even really practical. So I'm thinking, yeah, forget the tests. So I think what I probably want to do there is, I feel like we don't actually even need the commits from that. I'm probably gonna.
And you can check out a branch and manually.
Yeah, let's just. I'm just gonna close up the thing here and say what we've. Yeah. Okay. Here we go. First, and replace with something like the following in the device body font. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, so closing comments. That's in there. All right. So what we could just then do there is, so this is what I'm tempted to do there. Status. I've got that change in there. If I get, and I'm actually in develop there. So get check out -b. This should be warn user about, or warn admin. Now warn. Say warn if device secrets key not set in production. Okay, so I can go git push origin 1.5. Yep. And I guess but I haven't pushed it, but I haven't git, so I haven't added git commit adjust device config to warn no secret key set in production. Oh no, not just a warn to fail. To fail hard if no secret key set in production. Push origin. Okay. And then I need a pull request. I just want to complete -b develop. So, and this addresses. Go back over. What have I done with my? Oh, good. But the invitation link failure. That's this one. This is the URL. Okay. Okay. Pull request. Pull requested. Pull requests. Okay. Yeah. So that leaves us with two immediate things that are probably bigger than we can cope with in the time available. So one is this email validations thing, which we would like to wrap up. We got down to it feels, so we got this, it feels like that we got to this place where we worked out that there was quite extensive refactoring to be done to kind of make this all make sense. You've got a branch somewhere where we've got this all working apart from one test, isn't that right?
I don't recall.
Do you want to have a look at your branches?
What does this do?
This branch?
Just email validation.
I'm just going to put this. This is the branch name in your. Like, we were working on this at one point a couple of weeks back.
I don't have a branch. Oh, sorry. Is this on LocalSupport?
Yeah. Oh, let me just turn off my screen share briefly.
Yeah, I have that.
Okay. What's the latest commit that you have on that?
E1 F2AC3. It says it's ahead of
Yeah. Okay.
upstream or
Cool.
ahead of origin.
Do you want to share your screen?
Ahead of upstream.
Yeah. So I think that was the work that we got to, and we got to that sort of decision point about what to do. So I'm. You want to share your screen, and can we check? What do we have? How many tests do we have failing or comment? My memory of it is that we worked through a series of commented out tests, and we brought them back in, and we did some fixes. And I thought we got to like maybe the last one, and then it was like, oh, there's when it was kind of complicated.
Is this with cukes or specs?
This was cukes. I think all of the. I mean, you could run the specs first just to check that they pass, or do the cukes is fine either way. I mean, I guess just looking at the reasoning here, I mean, you know, I guess it makes sense to have the email validation that someone's proposing an organization and they give us their email and we tell them, oh, that's not a valid email, and they go, oh yeah, right, of course. Although I'm still, I don't know, like the validations just seem to have caused a fairly large amount of pain generally for relatively little immediate obvious benefit for the whole project overall. I mean, it all makes sense in principle, but so in particular, Marouin has done this change of like form error style so that when we get the validation fails, it tells you which field the problem is on, and that's
quite a few failures actually.
Yeah, I'm seeing that. And I think, yeah. So this is, I think this is definitely, if we have validations, highlighting the field that you have a problem with is definitely an improvement in terms of the user interface. Although, given that the main two, the ones that we've got, the name and the description at the top, that's kind of it's a fairly trivial. I mean, it's when something is missing deep within the form and you can't work out which part of the form has got a problem. But so what he's got here then is he's got some CSS issues like the ones I just fixed on one of his other branches. Although to be fair to him, I think the CSS issues are just he copied the CSS stuff that we'd used previously, and the basic CSS was our problem. He's suggesting that probably it would make sense to finish the email validations thing before we pull this one in, which you know increases the urgency with which I sense of you need to get the email validations thing at least resolve one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
So what are the failures that you're getting there?
With some unhandled VCR requests.
Do you want to? I mean, I would be tempted there to run bundle and then run the specs.
Huh. There's a lot of weird errors.
Okay. Just
active record not found error too.
That's weird.
I think this might be the one that we were looking at.
Yeah, that I think
specs are all passing.
Right. But so the failing cukes are all over the shop.
Do you want me to push this?
Yeah. Have you got that against, like, it would be nice for me to be able to access that at some point if I wanted to. Are you, what's your origin and what's your upstream there? Do you want, have you got that onto your
upstream?
Yeah.
Agile Ventures.
But so if you push it onto your, is it pushed onto your origin?
Probably.
Yeah. I guess what I want to do here is maybe git fetch. Have I got you down as Michael or in? No, okay. Remote minus v, new computer, git remote add Michael. Your username on GitHub is MTT 2013?
Yes, everything's up to date with Origin.
Okay. Git fetch Michael. Right, so I should there be able to, in principle, like check out Michael. Git. And this was right. Okay, and then yeah. Cool. So I've got access to that if I want to look at it. Yeah, I mean, sort of slightly from the pressure from Maro, and I was thinking there of like, okay, if we can just comment out that single test and have something that's ready to go, and then create appropriate chores for all the other things that need to be done, that's a good way of resolving it. But that seems to be not the case. So I'm tempted to leave that. I think I'm going to respond to Marowen and say, Marowen, I think this could be pulled in before the other validations PR. I think it's much better to get these kinds of things working piecemeal, and we have some gnarly issues with email violations. Fixing the Hound CSS issues on your other PR was relatively straightforward. Want to have a go on this one? If not, I'll take care of it. Okay. All right. So I think that sort of resolves the state of play for here. Didn't I asked? Okay. I'll close this and you can open a new one. Any code you create. Okay. And I was reflecting that you know, I meant to show this to the client today. I'm going to add that to my list of to do things. I guess I will leave that in there for the moment then. I was looking at part of the code base with, or the tests with Peter, and finding it difficult to navigate the Cucumber features in LocalSupport, and thinking, this should all be consolidated on the same ubiquitous language. So if that one is green, that's our change there. Let's pop that. We can merge that in. Okay. So I think that's LocalSupport sort of locked down. So I should probably stop and go and have lunch fairly soon.
All right.
I guess I'm kind of all like, it would be. I'm really sort of intrigued. Like, if we pull documents feature into here, what will happen? But I guess it's silly to start that now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess the sensible thing is me to have lunch now and then make sure that I wake up in good time for the autograders. Wake up. Well, I have my lunch and then I have my sort of meditation where I usually fall asleep. And I set an alarm to make sure that if I do fall asleep in the meditation, then I'm up in. But I'm finding it's helping me maintain a much more relaxed approach to life generally to have a regular meditation / sleep after lunch each day.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. Well, that was cool. It was cool to do some little LocalSupport stuff. Yeah. There probably won't be any more time today. So yeah.
Right.
What are your plans? Are you around next week?
Yeah, it should be. All right.
Yeah. Oh, the final thing I was going to say. So yeah, reading the Implementing Domain-Driven Design book further as I do on my lunch breaks. The interesting thing about something that I hadn't necessarily picked up from the first book is he's making this distinction between bounded contexts being the code, so to speak, and then the domains and subdomains kind of being like the world. So it's like you might have like a domain of or a subdomain of inventories, right? And that's all of the, you know, has certain language. But then the bounded context is actually you might have a piece of software that's dealing with
right.
a sub part of inventories or inventories and something else or what have you. And that was a distinction that I had not picked up at all on from.
I mean, the bounded context is like in this, like the same real world entity is referred here as a customer, and here is like a customer, like
right.
the canonical example is like here they're listed as a client,
Right.
and here they're listed as like someone who's already bought something and they have to be serviced, like with customer service or whatever. Two different parts of the application or two different applications.
Right. Yes, and then there might be
same real world entity is in different bounded contexts.
Yes, and the thing there is that the bounded context is a piece of
software. Yeah.
It is a piece of software, and but so in principle, but they're also like the domain model that you can have a separate domain model for each of those piece of contexts, but the domain model is different from the software. And the domain model doesn't have to correspond like even though that customer or client is the same real world entity in one domain and in another domain,
right.
Those domain models still may be fundamentally different, and they may, yes. I mean, are you interested in doing at some point trying to sketch out the different domains and bounded contexts of any one of the projects that we happen to be involved in?
Maybe, yeah. Yeah, cool. Well, interesting. I'm interested in how it
go on.
Intersects with microservices.
Right.
Just in because it seems like microservices are like an attempt to create small bounded contexts. Basically.
Yeah.
And to create like minimal domains. And like instead of, but it's kind of like it also has an architectural feature to it in that the service is actually running in a separate process.
Yeah.
Which has implications for like deployment and
debugging and
performance too.
Yeah.
I think.
Sure. I mean, of course, that was the thing that Armando and Dave have been trumpeting for the last, or at least trumpeted once and has been repeated through edX many times, is about the whole Amazon thing where I've forgotten the name of the main guy, like made this thing. It said basically, look, throughout the entire company, if you want to interact, you must use a web connection to do this. There's no more shared memory, no more shared databases, no more TCP/IP connections and your custom servers, whatever. Everybody, anything you're doing, connect through this thing and basically create a ecosystem of microservices of services, whether then microservices and another. Yeah. Yes, and it's a way of ensuring, as you say, smaller bounded contexts.
But you do have a lot of questions about. I mean, it seems like there's a lot of overhead with like rectifying like what entities are what entities and like how you actually I mean, there's a lot of also overhead with authentication and stuff. Like for each microservice, presumably you have to authenticate, right?
Right.
And like also see, like when we're in a monolithic app like a Rails app, like we can just reach into the database, and we know like, hey, this customer in this table is uniquely identified by this ID.
Right.
But now, like in a microservice world, that customer could exist in like
multiple databases,
15 different databases,
right,
with different
Right.
And like, how do you actually link those together
Right.
in a coherent way?
Right, and then there's the idea of a global ID, which in what Git uses with its commit hashes and what is like book ISBN things, is the idea of some kind of ID that transcends any individual database.
Yeah, but where does that live in another database?
Well, that almost exists outside the context of a database. It's sort of, I mean, I'm the way the Git hash is generated. I mean, it has to be generated somewhere, and then it exists in one or many databases depending upon where it's stored. And it's then you've got this process of trying to ensure that it's unique across the appropriate domain.
You have some hashing algorithm.
Yeah, it seems to be the thing. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was yeah. Sorry, go on.
All right. Well, I mean,
yeah. I mean, the interesting thing was that with the Agile bot as a microservice example is it like particularly because it was posting, like in trying to fix the bug the other week about the notifications, because I couldn't see from the log immediately what the website one server was posting to the Agile bot. It made it difficult to debug, and there would have been less steps involved if it had just been a part of that.
We could potentially increase the logging information.
We could. I mean, I guess what I feel like though is that the microservice is Slack, right? We've already got, it's talking to Slack. There's kind of like with the Agile bot, there's this tiny bit of logic that almost, yeah, I don't know. Maybe anyway, that's I think it's definitely. I'm also interested in microservices, but I'm also, there's a question of like, is it microservices for microservices' sake, or are they actually, delivering something important? Anyway, yes, good stuff. Well, have a great weekend, and I will catch up with you next week.
Have a good weekend. Bye.
All right, bye for now.